you would not wave the lulav, right? You take the lulav, you say the bracha on the lulav, you would get credit for the mitzvah of lulav, even if you don't wave the lulav. But nevertheless, there's such power to even the things that are not the integral part of the mitzvah, which means the point of waving the lulav, which is not the integral part of the mitzvah lulav, but nevertheless we see that it has so much power, just like we found by the korban. You mentioned that the offering that they brought on Shavuot, that they also had to wave the offering, and even though if they would not wave the offering, the offering would still be valid, but nevertheless, we said by waving the offering, it would remove, good morning, Adam, the wavering of the offering would remove bad winds, it would remove bad dew, it would serve as great protection for the Jewish community. It would help them prevent damage, financial damage to the Jewish community. And so that's what the Gemara, that's what we ended off yesterday, that we see the power of different parts of a mitzvah, that they have great purpose, and they accomplish a lot. So a person should not just focus and look at the thing that actually will make or break the mitzvah, but even the details of the mitzvah are also have a very powerful effect, tremendous change and effects and positivity and goodness for the Jewish people. That's what we.
Rabbi, is that also covered under the advice of Ekev? The details that, even though Ekev is the smaller mitzvot, but it sounds like also Ekev are the details of the mitzvot.
Right. Like Haimi's saying, Ekev Tishma'un, that the rabbis say Ekev is the heel, that there are mitzvot that people step on, that are light people's eyes, that they're not, and yet the reward is so great for those type of things that people don't give focus to. That's your connection, right, Haimi? Yes. Beautiful connection. You can put in your notes, Haimi. It's a nice chidush. Okay, so that's where we got to yesterday, and we'll wait for Mark, and we'll get back to some of the directions and the halal that we, exactly which hodu, which we said yesterday. We'll wait for Mark for that. So we're on 38A1. V'omar Rava. And Rava said, V'chein v'lulav. Rava said that the same way that we find that by the offering, there's this biblical mitzvah to do tenufa, to wave it in all 6 directions, as we said, to the east, north, east, south, west, and upwards and downwards. So too, there is the mitzvah that's what you do by the korban, and also we do that by the lulav. And then the Gemara says, Rav Acha bar Yaakov, mematile umaisile, he went ahead and he extended the lulav. Here we got, we got the lulav right over here, right? So he went ahead and let's say if he was going in the direction of east, he moved towards the east and coming back, right? That's what we do. In the direction that you move it, you go out, in, out, in, out, in, and you do it 3 times in each direction. And when he did it, he said, Dain gira be'enei de sitna. This is an arrow in the eyes of the Satan, of the evil inclination. That evil inclination tries to get us to sin, And this, the fact that we're careful about even the details of the mitzvah, which are not the meat and the potatoes of the mitzvah, the fact that we do that shows our great appreciation for mitzvot. And since he sees that we're careful, morning Simon, since he sees that we're careful to watch, to guard, and to keep even these parts of the mitzvah, so the Satan, some learn that the Satan, who tries to get us to do sin, he so to speak, pulls back. He gives up a little hope from trying to get us to sin, because he sees like he feels a little bit despair, or if that's the right word, he gives up. Good morning, Ariel. When he sees the Jewish people, he backs off a little bit. He's not so. He gets a little hit. He feels like he got hit. He sees the Jewish people are careful to keep the mitzvahs in all the details. So this is a real knockout to him. This is like an arrow in his eye, and this is what the rabbi would say. And the Gemara said that it's not the good thing to do. The Gemara says, don't be so open to the Satan, the Yetzer Hara. Yes, by the way, the Gemara says that Baba Batra, he wears it's the same angel. He's the Satan, he's the Yetzer Hara, he's the one who tries to get the person to sin. After he gets the person to sin, first he's the Yetzer Hara. Then he goes to the court upstairs. He's the Satan. He's the prosecutor. He got the goods because he was there. He got the guy to sin. He has them. Then after he prosecutes, if he's successful in the prosecution, then he becomes the Malach HaMavet. He becomes the angel of the messenger to kill the person. So he has these three hats, but he gets depressed, so to speak. He gets down, and when he sees that the Jewish people are so careful about the details. But don't be so open and tell him, I got you. Don't tell him this is an arrow, right, Simon? This is the arrow in your eye. Because once you're saying that, then maybe he's going to start to try to get you. He's going to try to hit back. He's not going to just take that musar and say, okay, look how good we are. You start saying how we're strong against you. You tell him that I got you in your face. I punched you in your face, or whatever it is. So he says, I'm going to try to get you to sin. So it's an interesting idea that the Gemara says, the lav miltahi, don't do that. Don't say that to him. Yes, you got him, but you don't have to tell him I got you. Don't have to, your enemy. You got your enemy. You don't have to say certain things to your enemy about how you got him, because maybe that enemy will want to put some extra strength to try to show you, you know what, you think you got me, but maybe you don't, I'll show you, so to speak. So therefore, the Gemara says, "V'lav miltahi." It's not a good thing for you to say that to the Satan. Mishum de'ati le'igruebe. He's going to come to the atela grube. He's going to come to try to incite you to sin. So that's how the Gemara concludes that point. Okay. Now we have the Mishnah, the new Mishnah on 38a. 1. Misha Babadera. Somebody that was he was traveling. V'lohoya lulav biyado. Lito. He had no lulav to take. So we would suggest at this point, we're talking about, let's say, Chalamohet Sukkot, right? He's traveling and he had no lulav. Let's say it's the third day of Sukkot, fourth day of Sukkot, and he for whatever reason, he didn't have a lulav on his trip. So when he comes home, what should he do? The first thing Ariel he should do when he comes home, right, Adam? You take the lulav. You got the lulav. You come home. The lulav's home, right? So you told Shulchano, you should take the lulav even if you forgot and you started eating, which you should not have done. what should you have done first? You should take the lulav before you had a big trip. You haven't eaten many hours. You came at home, but what should you do first? Right, Mr. Haber? Take the lulav. But if he forgot to take the lulav, he started eating, he has to stop in middle of his meal to take the lulav. So even though you started eating, you got to stop your meal and you take the lulav, right? So that's the, you know, he pick up the lulav, and he should pick it up in the proper way. Not that with the etrog, upside down. Say the bracha on the lulav, and after you say the bracha on the lulav, then you do the waving of the lulav. He waves the lulav and the etrog, with the lulav and the etrog, next, touching each other, right? The lulav and the etrog right next to each other. Wave it in the directions. So that's what he's supposed to. Supposed to do. So you say that you do the waving. So we do the waving at different places. We wave after we say the bracha on the lulav. We say the bracha. We turn over the etrog, right? And then after we turn over the etrog, we wave in the 6 directions. That's what he needs to do. He needs to stop. So the mitzvah lulav is only by day. Good point. Morning, Aaron. Good to see you back. The mitzvah of lulav is only says Bayom Harishon, Bayom and not Balayla. Just like the mitzvah of Brit Milah, Bayom Hashmini. Brit, circumcision is when? By daytime. No circumcision, we don't circumcise at night. Similar to Lulav. The mitzvah of Lulav is only by day and not by night. Say it again. So day, very good. So the Mishnah also states that the ideal time to take the lulav is after sunrise. After sunrise. I would presume if a person cannot take it after sunrise, then he could take it before sunrise, as long as it's, after dawn, after, it's already it's already daybreak, it's already considered the new day. Technically, when there's rays when the rays of light are in the east, usually, technically like 72 minutes before sunrise, many times, approximately is, is when it's dawn. What do you say? The whole afternoon is daytime until sunset is for sure daytime. And he would say a bracha on the lulav until sunset. Let's say if sunset is, let's say today's sunset most probably is around 5:20 or so. So if today would be Sukkot, you could say the bracha until 5:20. And after 5:20, being that's already a questionable time, so if you between call that twilight, Bein Hashmashot, between sunset and night and definite night, you would take the lulav without a bracha. So with Brit, I would say that if it's after sunset, we will not do the Brit. We would wait to the next day, because in Brit, you have a different opportunity the next day. But when it comes to lulav, every day it's its own opportunity. If you miss today, you miss today. There's no makeup for lulav if you miss lulav today, right, Aaron? Guy missed lulav today, he missed today's mitzvah, tomorrow he has new mitzvah. But Brit, if you get, you have one chance to give the kid a Brit, make sure you did it at the right time, and you did it during the daytime. And so if you didn't do it today because it's late, it's after sunset, then you would do it. You would do the Brit tomorrow. That's why people, if you notice, sometimes if they'll ever have a Brit a little delayed, because maybe the color of the child, the baby might have been a little yellow. Sometimes they might have a Brit in the afternoon. There are times that we have a Brit in the afternoon because the babies, the doctor felt that they need, the Moel, the ones doing the circumcision felt he needed a few more hours under the light, the baby, but they will make sure that they get it in before sunset. We'll make sure they get in the Brit before sunset. So now, the Mishnah continues. The Mishnah states, Lo not al shachrit, if he did not take the lulav in the morning, there's an idea of, even though we're going to say that the whole day is technically the window of the time for the lulav, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, you could take the lulav. But there is another idea that you should always do the mitzvah the earlier time that you could do it. At least at least the earlier time from the proper time. So therefore, it would, technically, after sunrise would be the most ideal time. The earlier, the better. But of course, we know not everybody davens at Vatikin. Not everyone davens early in the morning. But whatever the normal minyan time, it's you should do to take the love. Not that a person says, let's say a person finds himself in a situation that he's not going to a minyan that day, wherever he is. And he has no minyan around him. So when should he take the lulav? So he's supposed to do it first thing in the morning. You don't say, okay, I have time to the afternoon. I have the whole day to do it. I'm not in the synagogue. No, you have a mitzvah to do. You're supposed to do it. Zrizim makdimin mitzvah, but which is from sunrise. But if like I said, that in Shulchan Aruch it says if a person has to travel, for some reason he can't wait the sunrise, he could do it after dawn. Okay, is that clear, Simon? But now he went ahead, lo not al shachrit. He did not take the lulav in the morning, which he should have done. The yitul ben harbayim. He could take the lulav in the afternoon. Shekol hayom kosher lelulav. The whole day is kosher for the mitzvah of what? Of lulav. It's interesting, Megillah reading is coming up soon, right? And it's a similar thing that technically the whole day is the mitzvah to read the Megillah. That means if you did not hear the Megillah in the morning, you got the afternoon to hear the Megillah. But I am not excited when I see someone, I'm not excited when I see there's an afternoon reading for the Megillah and for men to go to. Meaning if a man is going to say, you know what, I'm going to hear the Megillah at 3:30 in the afternoon. Why aren't you hearing a Megillah earlier in the morning? Now, technically, Rabbi, what do you mean? Technically, the mitzvah Megillah is the whole day, right? Does the guy get credit for reading Megillah at 3:30 in the afternoon, Aaron? The answer is yes. When I was teaching at Pace University, I made a Megillah reading for the students, let's say in the afternoon. They were not religious students. They weren't going to come to the Megillah in the morning. And that was the time they had free hour. So during free hour, we made a Megillah reading. But those are students that are not religious. And they're not going to hear the Megillah earlier. But a person who's capable of hearing the Megillah earlier, you shouldn't be finding yourself hearing the Megillah in the afternoon. You should be finding yourself at your first, earlier in the day. Just a point. Okay, comes the Gemara. Amrat, you said, now the Gemara is going to try to understand this law that you should stop your meal, middle of your meal. You should stop the middle of your meal to do the mitzvah of lulav. Where the Gemara is going to challenge it, because we have a similar thing, regarding what's the halacha regarding mincha. Let's say it's time to daven mincha, and a person instead of davening mincha, he went ahead and he started eating a meal, right? So what's the halacha over there? If a person started, what do you say? Yeah, the Gemara is going to talk about you have time. There's time to do mincha afterwards. Do we say he has to stop his meal in order to daven mincha? So look what Ariel, you're going to see the Gemara is going to address your point. Amrit notala shulchano. You said that you take the lulav on your table, so to speak. Meaning, what do you mean on your table? That means even if you're in the middle of your meal, you get up from your meal and you take your lulav and your etrog, right? L'meimra de mafsik. That teaches us that you need to stop your meal to take the lulav and the etrog. Uraminu, I have a contradiction. Imitchilu. If the Mishnah stated that you're supposed to go ahead and you should not start them. There's certain things that Rashi brings down. You shouldn't go to. Things you shouldn't do before you daven mincha. And one of the things it says is don't start a meal. Don't start a meal. That's what the Shulchan Aruch, that Yosef Cairo brings down. He says don't start to eat even a small meal. A small meal would most probably mean with bread, a bread meal. Near once the time for mincha has come, but if you started the meal, you do not need to stop the meal as long as you have time in the day to, after you finish your meal, to say mincha. So, but if there's no time afterwards to say mincha, you have to stop right away. Okay, so that's what the Shulchan Aruch says over here, that you should not start your meal. Now, what would mean? Now, if you have a minyan that you can be going to later on, that's not a problem. You want to have a meal washed for bread, and you're having a minyan. You have a meal later on. That's not a problem. You could go ahead and wash in the afternoon because you have a set minyan. But what happens if a person does not have a set minyan? Person doesn't have a set minyan. It would seem like coming out, at least the opinion of Rabbi Yosef Cairo, the Sephardi opinion would seem to be that if it's time to daven mincha, if the afternoon is here, you should not sit down to wash on bread, if you're not going to go to a minyan. That's what it seems from the language of the Shulchan Aruch of the Rabbi Yosef Cairo, because he says even if you're samach mincha gedolah, which would mean, let's say noontime or a half hour, let's say about noontime, you should not go ahead and start even a meal, a small bread meal. You should not. And by the way, it's a similar thing when it comes to arvit at night. You shouldn't be having, if a person's going to have a bread meal at night, if you're going to be going to a minyan later on, you have a set time to go to a minyan, so you can have technically that bread meal. But if you're not going to a minyan later on, set minyan, you should not be washing for a bread meal before you daven arvit. Same thing before you daven mincha. That seems to be the Sephardi opinion here in the Shulchan Aruch. I don't know if everyone's aware of such a thing. I don't know if it's so well publicized, this idea of avoiding, don't start your bread meal in the afternoon or your bread meal at night if you're not going to a minyan. First, you daven mincha. First, you go ahead and Mr. Haber is shaking his head. Yes, Rabbi, that sounds right. Makes a lot of sense. Okay, comes the Gemara, and the Gemara says, we have a contradiction. No problem. Thank you. One place, when it comes to lulav and etrog, we said if you started the meal, you have to stop the meal, take the lulav and etrog. And when it comes to mincha, we say you don't have to stop the meal. You could just continue eating. Why is it? What's the difference? Why should it be? Aaron, you hear the question. Why is mincha? We're more easier when it comes to mincha. We don't say stop your meal and daven mincha. Continue your meal and daven mincha afterwards. But when it comes to lulav, the Mishnah says you got to stop what you're doing. Stop that meal and take the lulav. So first the Gemara says, Amar of Safra, what Ariel was talking about before. Rabbi, it depends on the case. Is there time in the day after the meal to take the lulav or not? So the Mishnah is talking about lo kasha. It depends if there's time in the day to do the mitzvah afterwards. Let's say by the case in the Mishnah in Shabbat, by mincha, there's time to daven mincha. But in our Mishnah, where the concern is, it's talking in a place when you will not have time to go ahead and you came from the road, you were traveling, so most probably you came back from your trip, you came back maybe you came sometime in the afternoon, so therefore you should take your lulav right away, and if you didn't take the lulav right away and started eating, you're ready, but probably if you're going to continue eating, so I'll take the lulav later, there's a concern, there's no time in the day, and you will miss out the time you miss the mitzvah. So therefore, that's why the Mishnah says you have to stop to do the mitzvah. My only question on this answer is that should be obvious. If there's not going to be time of the day to do the mitzvah, so why do you need the Mishnah? Why would you need to tell me stop the meal? Because if you don't stop the meal, if you're not going to have time, of course you have to stop the meal. That's a question on this approach at this point. We're going to see how the Gemara is going to continue. But that's what the Gemara says. No contradiction. Mr. Haber's famous line, what's the case? If the case is different, maybe the law might be different. So if we're going to say the case is different, the circumstance is different. One, it's in the afternoon, late in the afternoon, and if you're going to continue eating and you don't stop, take the lulav, you're going to miss out the mitzvah, stop and do the mitzvah. The case of mincha, it wasn't late in the day. It was early afternoon or whatever it was. And you have time to finish the meal and do davening. So once you started eating, you don't have to interrupt your meal. You can continue, even though it's an interesting halacha, even though you did not follow the law, because you were supposed to go ahead. You see, it's an amazing movement. Good morning in the halacha that on the one hand the rabbi said, for most probably for fence purposes, don't eat and don't sit down and have bread until you daven mincha. But if you didn't follow the law, yet the rabbis were lenient and they said, you know what? You don't have to stop your meal. Jaime, is that interesting? They tell you first daven and then eat your wash for bread. But if you didn't follow the rules and the person went ahead and he started eating, yet they said you don't have to stop. There's a sensitivity, the rabbi said, for the person's situation. You're already in the middle of your meal. The rabbi said you could continue eating your meal. You don't have to interrupt your meal. And that's what the rabbis. Yes, Ariel. That's a very good point. The Ariel is saying another point, that mincha is something we do all year round, so we're much more connected and sensitive to doing that mitzvah. It's part of our schedule. So maybe there's less of a concern that you're going to miss out. Lulav, that's what you're saying. It's something there's only a few times a year you do lulav. It's a 7-day mitzvah. So you might forget. It's not part of your normal, in your everyday focus. It's interesting. It's a nice idea, and I also was to think of that idea, but the Gemara did not use that as an answer, unless that's somehow part of it. The Gemara did not at least state that did not use it as the meat and potatoes of the answer, because the Gemara doesn't mention that. By the way, you should know that concept is interesting, that we find chametz on Pesach. Tosfos says a beautiful idea. On Pesach, not only you can't eat chametz, you can't have chametz in your house. And you can't own chametz. I don't care if you have a chametz, you have a factory in China, you can't own chametz on Pesach. And now why is it, if it has to do, let's say pork. Technically, if a person has it in his closet, not kosher food in his closet, the Torah does not prohibit you to have a non-kosher food in your closet. It might not be smart to have not kosher food in your closet, but technically, if you have in your closet not kosher food for whatever reason, the Torah doesn't say you can't have it in the closet. The Torah says you can't eat the not kosher food, right? The Torah doesn't say you can't have in your house not kosher food. Why is it that Pesach, the Torah says you can't even have it in your house? So I think Tosfos says the idea that Ariel was saying, that Pesach, the Torah wants to guard you that you should not come to eat chametz. And because eating chametz, the punishment is karet, is getting cut off in the next world, which is a very high level punishment. But since we constantly have chametz the whole year round, we eat chametz 350 something days a year, we eat chametz. So it's very, if we're going to keep the chametz around, it's easy for a person to forget and come to eat the chametz. Okay, there's no karet for forgetting, but it's still a big sin. The person violated that sin. So therefore, because the whole year round we're used to eating chametz, so perhaps that was part of the kindness of Hashem to help us, to ensure us that we're not going to come to make a mistake and eat chametz. So what does Hashem say? Don't have chametz in your house. That's a fence. The Torah itself created a fence. We know the rabbis are told to create fences to protect. The Torah created a fence. That's how the Netziv learns, that the Torah connects the prohibition of don't have chametz in your house, because the Torah says, but anyone who eats chametz gets karet, then I don't want you to have it in your house, because I'm afraid you might come to that mistake. But when it comes to bacon, you don't eat it the whole year round. It's not something that you're used to having, therefore, we're not afraid if you have it in the closet, you're going to come to make sure it's labeled bacon. But I'm not afraid that you're going to come to go ahead and eat it. So the Gemara says, Amar Rava. So Rava, back to the Gemara. Rava shoots back, my kusha. What is the question? What is the contradiction between the law of mincha and the law of lulav and etrog? Dilma, hadaraita and hadarabana. Maybe we are more stricter on the biblical law. Maybe the rabbi said, you know what, when it comes to a biblical law of lulav and etrog, which is a biblical mitzvah. Now, the biblical mitzvah is only the first day. And in the time of the Mikdash, but in the Beit HaMikdash, by the taking it by the Mikdash, it's for 7 days. But outside the Mikdash, the biblical mitzvah is the first day. But okay, we could say that the case of stopping your meal for the lulav is because lulav is a biblical mitzvah. So they said you have to stop the meal. But in the case of mincha, mincha is not a biblical mitzvah. Mincha is a rabbinic mitzvah. So therefore, they said you don't have to stop your meal and do it afterwards. Meaning to say, what he's saying is even if you have time in the day after you finish your meal to take the lulav and the etrog, but because it's a biblical mitzvah, maybe that's why you have to stop right now, even though it's early afternoon. Time you finish your meal, you'll have time to take the lulav. But because it's biblical, maybe the rabbi said you got to be more strict. But a rabbinic mitzvah, the rabbi says, you know what, you have time after you finish your meal, take the lulav and etrog after you finish your meal. Now, here the Gemara is saying that prayer mincha is rabbanan. So you should know, everyone should know, that the Rambam, Maimonides, holds prayer every day is biblical. There's a biblical mitzvah, min Torah, one of the 613 mitzvot he counts is the mitzvah of tefillah. He counts tefillin is a mitzvah min Torah, and tefillah, davening, is a mitzvah min Torah. But the mitzvah min Torah of davening is not a davening of 19 brachot. The Rambam says to fill the mitzvah of davening, you say a prayer where you praise Hashem, you have a praise, a request, and a thank you, which is a very small prayer. It takes about 20 seconds. How long does it take? You say Birkat HaShachar. You say one of the last bracha of Birkat HaShachar. That bracha contains a praise, a request, and a thank you. You can technically fulfill your mitzvah on a Torah level, according to the Rambam, by saying a short prayer. To say mincha, that's rabbinic. The rabbis say you say a whole shachrit with 19 brachot by shachrit and 19 brachot by mincha, and we arvid. But the biblical mitzvah can be fulfilled in a very short amount of time. So that's what.
Is there any one particular bracha that fulfills the deoraita?
I would say Birkat HaTorah would do both, because Birkat HaTorah should do both, because you have a praise to Hashem, you have Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu Melech Haolam, that He's the King of the world. You say Hiratzon Fanecha, we say Harev Na Hashem Elokeinu, make sweet the Torah. That's the request, and then you also say, and you also thank Hashem by saying you chose us from all the nations. So I would say that Birkat Torah can fulfill the mitzvah min Torah, but I like a lot the bracha. Anyways, you're saying Birkat Torah. Anyways, is the bracha Hamavi Sheina Me'enai Snuma Me'af Hapoy. that bracha where that Hashem removes slumber from our, tiredness, sleep from our eyes. That bracha is a long bracha which ends Hagomecha Sadim Tovim Moisha, contains all 3 points. So it's one bracha, and I always say, women. It says in the Mishnah, women are obligated to pray. But the question is, how much do women have to pray? We have to make sure all Jewish women, all girls, from the age of whatever age, for sure when they're 12, and that they have to say at least something, a prayer every day, some sort of something. They got to say something. If a woman 7 days a week, it's not just Shabbat, the lady goes to synagogue. Every woman has an obligation. According to the Rambam, it would be a biblical obligation, and according to others, it would be at least a rabbinic obligation to say the women have to pray. They have to say something every day. If any women that are whether it's someone's wife, someone's mother, someone's grandmother, good morning, make sure she's saying something every day. Be encouraging, and that's how things happen in life. Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you.